Hi, Florida House Democratic Leader Fentrice Driscoll here. What's new? Happy Sunday to you. My goodness, it's been a whirlwind of a day. And no, I don't dress like this all day on Sundays. I literally have done 5 interviews back to back to back. Now that we have the news that President Biden has stepped down in the campaign and Vice President Harris has stepped up and she has his endorsement to move forward as the top of the ticket in this election in 2024, the presidential ticket. And I just wanted to check in with you now that I have a moment to catch my breath, maybe share a little bit about what I'm thinking with you. But I hope y'all will get active in the chat because I want to hear from you and hear what you're thinking. For where to even start. First of all, let's start that I had a great event last night where I was with some folks and trying to do some things to support my campaign and was up really, really late and thought that maybe this afternoon, maybe I just might take a quick little nap to get some rest. And when I woke up and checked my phone, I saw the news that President Biden had stepped down and that Vice President Harris had stepped up. And my initial thought, first and foremost, was that my goodness, we owe such a great debt of gratitude to President Joe Biden. And you think about the times that he has led us through, and really continues to lead us through as president, not only the COVID-19 pandemic, not only very challenging economic times with high inflation, but just really a tenuous time internationally. There's so much that's going on. And this is a president who has always kept his focus on the American people, putting the people first. We now have the strongest economy in the world. Inflation has come down. Inflation's still a challenge in Florida, but child, that's a whole other conversation. For that, you got to tune in on a Tuesday night at our regular time for a Driscoll debrief. Um, but I also just have to imagine. I mean, I don't know that any of us will ever know what these past couple of weeks have been like for him. Whereas he's worked so hard to give so much to his country in public service his entire life, but had been asked to step aside, and now he has answered those calls. But as he steps aside and as he does this, as he says, for our country, for what he believes is the good of our country, I think we have to say thank you to him for all the sacrifices that he's made. If you think about it, when he ran back in 2020, I mean, he really did this for the country. I think I remember hearing him say that he wasn't even really thinking about it, but they kind of, drew him out of retirement to do this and to help right the ship and undo some of the damage that we'd seen under the Trump administration. And so, from the bottom of my heart, President Biden, thank you for everything that you have done for our country, for the things that you will continue to do as you finish out your presidency strong. And then we turn our attention to Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now at the top of the ticket. Um, we know I disagree with that sentiment. His obligation isn't done until he resigns. Then platitudes. Oh, Stephen, thank you for chiming in with your thoughts. I mean, I think it's a great sacrifice to have stepped down at the top of the ticket. And now we turn our attention to Vice President Harris. Really, that is what we are up against. That is our biggest challenge as we head into this November. So, as Democratic leader in Florida, I've had the chance to work very closely with Vice President Harris on a number of issues, particularly on reproductive freedom. So I know most folks who tune in are a Florida audience, but we do get folks from around the country. And so, just in case you don't know, I mean, I know you've seen a lot of the extremism coming out of Florida. Part of that is a near total abortion ban, where it puts abortion access beyond the reach of most women before they even know that they are pregnant. And now that we've had Roe versus Wade overturned, we see that there are abortion bans that have been popping up all across the country, including in Florida. And Vice President Harris has been a trusted voice and leader on that issue. So shortly after the Dobbs decision overturning Roe versus Wade was issued, the vice president started convening groups of leaders from all across the country to talk about these issues, to brainstorm what could be done, how could the federal government be partners to us at the state level. And I was honored to participate in, I think it was the very first roundtable that they had in the White House on that. If it wasn't the first, it was one of the first. And that's where I first had the chance to meet Vice President Harris. And what I'll tell you about her is that she's smart. Remember that she was Attorney General of the largest state in the country, that being California. She's an attorney. She understands constitutional law very well. But what a lot of people may not know is she's actually really funny. She's actually really funny. She's quick with a quip or with a joke. It certainly put me at ease because it was my first time participating in anything like that at the White House. And I felt, of course, all this immense pressure going there, trying to represent for Florida and talk about the issues that have been happening in our state. I think at that time we'd had a 15-week abortion ban in play. And she just really put everyone at ease. She clearly was engaged in the conversation and able to analyze the issues in very thoughtful ways, talk about what this really means for the American people in a very relatable way, because these are personal issues of heart and home, and really stand up and be a champion, but also to be able to listen, right? Like to listen and get feedback from those of us who were there. It wasn't, I didn't feel like it was the administration trying to tell us what to do. I really felt like she was there to listen and be a good partner. And I appreciated it. And then our relationship has been able to grow from there. And shortly after that, this was back in 2022, it was like summer of 2022, she came to Florida for a roundtable on reproductive freedom and tapped me to moderate it, which I was so honored to do. And that was a trip where actually she gave me a ride on Air Force Two to get from Orlando, where the event was being held, to Tampa, which was her next stop. And that's, of course, where my district is. And so that was so cool to have that opportunity to spend more time with her. But the point being that there are a lot of folks who I feel like have taken Florida for granted. There are a lot of people who would tell you that Florida's not in play, that we're just a red state, and they write us off. But I have really appreciated that Vice President Harris has not done that. She has continued to come to Florida. She has continued to be a strong ally to help us push back against the extremism that we've seen from this governor's administration. And I just really appreciate how she's been a fighter for the American people. So I'm optimistic having her at the top of the ticket. As a Black woman, it means a lot to me too. So I'm the first Black woman to lead either party in the Florida House of Representatives. Let me say that again. First Black woman to lead either party in the Florida House of Representatives. So we're still making first here, folks, because I just took that position in 2022. Vice President Harris just became the first Black vice president and the first Asian American vice president and the first woman vice president in 2020. So she's someone who I look up to in terms of her strength and her courage and her poise and how she leads as a Black woman leader. And I am so excited to see her step up into this role because I believe she's ready for it. And folks forget her resume. Again, she was Attorney General of the largest state in the nation. She was a United States Senator from the largest state in the nation. And she has served as vice president for 4 years. And if she is good enough to be vice president, then damn it, she is certainly good enough to be president of the United States. She is battle tested. She is ready. I've seen her and had the chance to observe her work up close. And I think she's prepared for this moment. So I know it's been a whirlwind too. We talk a lot whenever we have our time together, typically on Tuesday nights, that I know politics can feel very heavy. And I would say certainly on the Democratic side, there's been a lot of uncertainty. But what I've always maintained is that we have to have hope. So the events of today don't really change anything for me, except give me that little extra, maybe a little extra oomph and excitement. But our task remains the same. So in Florida in particular, but this applies really wherever you are, we are facing unprecedented times in this country where we have a nominee on the other side, in former President Donald Trump, who really wants to continue to stoke divisiveness. And I think as a country, we really need to come together. This is a time particularly for us to find our courage and to unite and think about who it is that we want to be. America's not perfect, we know that, but we've always been striving to be that more perfect union. It is written into our Constitution. It is beautiful. It is aspirational. It is who we are. And in that way, that gives us the opportunity to always grow, to always, even as individuals, be able to do our part to push us to continue towards that great destiny. And so, that means, though, to kind of break that down at the local level and the individual level, that means that we have to vote. We've been blessed with an amazing democracy. It's a democratic republic, and it only works, or it works best, when we all participate. And that means that we have to vote. That means that we have to be registered to vote. That means that we have to make sure that our friends and family are registered to vote. That means that we have to get maybe even a little vulnerable and a little uncomfortable and talk to people about these policies that are at play and how they impact us in our own individual lives. In Florida, for example, there's been a lot happening that would lead us to suppress our stories or have our stories suppressed, whether it's been, attacks on Black history, whether it's been attacks on reproductive freedom, you name it. It's been so much over the past several years, attacks on the LGBTQ community. But I think it's time for us to come together and exercise our voice. And that is how we do it, is through voting. Exercise our voice and talk about the Florida that we want to see. Talk about the democracy that we want to see. Because I'm a big believer that every Floridian, every American should be able to look at their government and know that it cares about them and be able to see their place and see where they fit in. We need to be focused more on, I believe, unity. Unity. We are the United States of America, and Florida is blessed to be a part of that. But the way that we exercise that voice is absolutely through voting. Now, the election's coming up soon. I'm talking November 5th, so we don't have a lot of time for this. It's a little over 100 days. So what can you do? This is a question I'd love for you to be pondering. What can you do within this time that we have to help bring this to reality? We talk a lot about hope, how to overcome problematic elections. The way to do that, again, is to get engaged. Think about it. Are there maybe even just 5 folks you can look through your phone right now and text and check in on them? Ask them how they're feeling with the news that happened today. Just check in. You don't have to try to persuade them one way or the other, but just establish that line of communication so you can be in contact with them as we head into the election. Or perhaps another idea, you can find those 5 friends and just make sure that they're registered to vote. Just start there. We want to make sure that people are registered to vote and that they have a plan to vote. That sounds like a small step, but this is how states like Georgia and Wisconsin and Michigan have been able to restore balance to their government and be able to have some of these races go blue so that it's more reflective of the electorate and the people who live there. So this is the work that we are called to do in this time. Again, I am excited. I am energized. I will do everything that I can to help Madam Vice President, because I think she is the leader who has been called at this time to be that trusted voice and to step in and to fulfill this gap now that President Biden has stepped back. I think she's been an admirable vice president, and she's battle tested and she's ready to do the job. She's capable of doing the job. And I hope that the American people get to see her in her fullest self, get to see all sides of her. Because like I mentioned, she's really funny. She's very personable. She's whiplash smart, and she cares a lot about our country. And that gives me confidence too. So thank you. Just wanted to check in. Hey, Liam. Oh my gosh, so good to hear from you. Thank you for your comments in the chat. And if ever there's anything, guys, that my team or I can do not hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to us on social media, or you can always send us an email at yourvoice@ventressforflorida.com. Thanks so much. And we will see y'all during our regular time on Tuesday. Take care.